I never imagined my life would take the turn it did. For years, everything had been steady, predictable. I had my routines, my responsibilities, and my husband, Michael. Life was comfortable, if not a little dull. But then Daniel Hayes walked into my world, and suddenly, everything changed. It began innocently enough. I had seen Daniel around the hospital before. He was a pharmacist, 9 years younger than me, with a quiet confidence that made him impossible to ignore. There was something about the way he carried himself, calm, composed, as if no amount of chaos could shake him. It was magnetic in a way I hadn't expected. One evening, after a grueling shift, I found myself in the break room, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, grateful for a rare moment of solitude. The day had been relentless, and exhaustion weighed heavy on my shoulders. That's when Daniel walked in, balancing a tray of paperwork in one hand and a mug of tea in the other. He smiled, not the polite, fleeting smile of co-workers, but something warmer, something genuine. "Long day?" he asked, setting his things down. "Always," I replied with a tired laugh. We chatted, just small talk about work and the hospital's never-ending pace. But there was something in the way he listened, the way his presence seemed to quiet the noise in my mind. Later that night, as I walked to my car, I saw him standing outside, scrolling through his phone while the first drops of rain began to fall. Without thinking, I rolled down my window and called out, "Need a ride?" He hesitated, surprised by the offer. "Are you sure? I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," I said, unlocking the door. "Hop in before you get soaked." That first drive home was unremarkable in the grand scheme of things, but even now, I remember every detail. The scent of his cologne, cedarwood and citrus, subtle but intoxicating. The way his laughter filled the space between us, warm yet slightly guarded. By the time I pulled up to his apartment, the weight of the day had lifted, replaced by something I couldn't quite name. I told myself it was just a ride, a small kindness. But then it happened again. And again. Our conversations grew longer, more personal. He told me about his childhood in Seattle, how he had once dreamed of becoming an engineer like his father but had chosen pharmacy instead because he wanted to help people. I confided in him about my long-buried dream of becoming a doctor, something I had set aside when life got in the way. "You still can," he said one evening, his voice full of quiet encouragement. His words caught me off guard. No one had ever said that to me before. Not even Michael. Michael. I should tell you about him. He is a good man, reliable, hardworking. But somewhere along the way, we had stopped being partners and had become something closer to roommates. Our conversations were reduced to schedules and bills. The spark we once had. Gone. I never intended for things with Daniel to go further. I didn't plan for the stolen glances, the lingering touches, the way my heart raced whenever I saw him. But it happened. And once it did, there was no going back. One night, after I had driven him home yet again, Daniel turned to me. His expression was unreadable, his voice quiet but firm. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Giving me rides. Spending time with me." I froze, my pulse pounding in my ears, my mind scrambling for an answer. "Because I enjoy your company," I admitted finally, my voice barely above a whisper. He held my gaze, searching. "I enjoy your company too. More than I probably should." In that moment, everything shifted. The unspoken connection we had been dancing around became impossible to ignore. I wish I could say I stopped it there, that I walked away and returned to my life as it was. But I didn't. Every day, I found myself drawn to him, to the way he made me feel seen, alive. I know what you're thinking. How could I let it happen? How could I risk everything for someone I barely knew? Trust me, I've asked myself the same questions 1,000 times. But when you've been living on autopilot for so long, the first spark of something real is impossible to resist. It's like waking up after years of sleepwalking. The days that followed were a blur of emotions. Every moment at work felt charged, every accidental touch, every shared glance. The boundaries I had so carefully built were beginning to blur, and I was powerless to stop it. One afternoon, as I was finishing my shift, I caught sight of Daniel at the pharmacy counter, speaking to a patient. His voice, calm and steady, carried over the hospital's usual chaos. Then he looked up, and our eyes met. A small, knowing smile tugged at his lips. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly looked away, pretending to be engrossed in my clipboard. Later, as I stepped out into the evening rain, I saw him waiting near the entrance. Light but persistent drops drizzled from the sky, dampening the pavement. "Need a ride?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay light. He hesitated, as if weighing the consequences, then nodded. "If you don't mind." The drive was quiet at first, the rain tapping softly against the windshield. My hands tightened around the steering wheel, my thoughts an unspoken storm inside me. "Emily," Daniel said suddenly. His voice was soft, but firm. I glanced at him. "Yeah." "This can't go on like this," he said. "We need to talk about whatever this is." My heart clenched. I knew he was right. But hearing him say it out loud made it real. "I know," I murmured. When I pulled up outside his apartment, neither of us moved to get out. The rain streamed down the windows, blurring the outside world into streaks of silver and grey. "I don't want to make things harder for you," Daniel said quietly. "But I can't ignore how I feel." I turned to him, my chest tightening. "And how do you feel?" His dark eyes held mine, full of something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. "I think about you all the time." The words hung between us, fragile yet undeniable. And in that moment, I realized I had never been more terrified in my life. "I don't know where this is going, but I know I don't want to stop seeing you." His honesty was both terrifying and exhilarating. I felt as though I was standing at the edge of a cliff, the wind pulling me in every direction, threatening to consume me. My heart pounded in my chest, my pulse racing as I tried to steady myself against the emotions swirling inside me. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice barely more than a whisper, trembling under the weight of the truth. Daniel reached for my hand, his fingers brushing against mine. Gentle, hesitant, but undeniably there. "We'll figure it out together." I nodded, even as every logical part of my mind screamed for me to stop, to pull away, to turn back before it was too late. But my heart had already begun to fall. Our connection deepened in ways I hadn't expected, in ways I wasn't prepared for. We found reasons to cross paths at work, moments stolen in the break room, in quiet corners of the hospital where the world seemed to pause just for us. The guilt was always there, a constant, nagging weight in the back of my mind. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't let go. At home, Michael started to notice. The way I seemed distant, the way I avoided his gaze. He asked if everything was okay, his voice lined with quiet concern. I lied. I told him I was just exhausted from work, that the long shifts were wearing me down. But the truth was, I didn't know how to face him. I didn't know how to admit that I wasn't the same woman he had married, that I had changed in ways neither of us could have foreseen. One evening, after work, Daniel and I walked together through the quiet streets of the city. The rain had faded, leaving behind that crisp, clean scent that made everything feel new. We talked about everything and nothing, his love for old books, my childhood dreams, the way the city lights reflected off the damp pavement like scattered stars. As we reached the end of the street, he stopped suddenly and turned to me. His eyes, dark and searching, held a question I wasn't ready to answer. "I need to know something," he said softly. My breath caught in my throat. "What?" He hesitated for only a moment before speaking again. "Do you see a future for us, or is this just a moment?" The question hit me like a freight train. I had been so caught up in the whirlwind of emotions, the intoxicating rush of something new, that I hadn't allowed myself to think about the consequences. About what would happen next. "I don't know," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, my eyes stinging with unshed tears. "I've built a life with Michael. I don't know how to walk away from that." Daniel nodded, his expression pained but understanding. "I'm not asking you to make a decision right now," he said. "I just need to know if there's hope." I met his gaze, my heart aching with the weight of uncertainty. "I don't know if I can give you the answer you want," I admitted, my voice barely above a breath. "But I can't imagine my life without you in it." We stood there in the quiet of the night, the world moving on around us while we remained frozen in the moment, caught between what was and what could be. A week later, everything came crashing down. Michael found a text from Daniel on my phone. It was simple. "Thank you for today." Nothing more, nothing incriminating. But it was enough. Enough to raise suspicion. Enough to unravel everything. "Who's Daniel?" he asked, his voice calm but sharp, his eyes searching mine for an answer I wasn't sure how to give. My stomach twisted, my mind racing for a way out. "He's a pharmacist at work," I said carefully. "We've been working on a project together." Michael studied me for a long moment, his silence heavier than any words could have been. "Is there something you're not telling me, Emily?" I opened my mouth to lie again, but I couldn't. The weight of it all, the guilt, the deception, the undeniable truth, I couldn't carry it anymore. "I don't know how to explain this," I said finally, my voice cracking, my eyes burning as tears slipped down my cheeks. "But I've been unhappy for a long time. And Daniel, he made me feel alive again." Michael didn't speak. He just stood there, his face unreadable, his silence louder than any accusation. And when he finally did speak, his words shattered me. "I think we need some time apart." And just like that, my carefully constructed life began to crumble. I moved into a small apartment not far from the hospital. Daniel and I continued to see each other, but it wasn't the same. The weight of what I had lost hung between us like a shadow, a constant reminder of the price I had paid. Some days, I questioned everything, wondered if I had made the right choice, if I had thrown away a decade of my life for something fleeting. But then there were other days when I was with Daniel, when he smiled at me like I was the only person in the world, when I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest I had ever endured. My life felt fragmented, split between the pain of leaving my marriage and the uncertainty of what lay ahead with Daniel. Michael and I agreed to file for separation. We kept things civil, but every conversation felt like a knife twisting in my chest. He had been my rock for so long, and now I had become the storm that shattered us. Daniel and I tried to take things slowly, to build something real this time. We spent more time together outside of work, long walks through the park, quiet evenings cooking dinner, endless conversations about the future. But the guilt never fully disappeared. I had hurt people in the process of finding my own happiness, and that wasn't something I could easily forgive myself for. One day, I knew I had to face Michael. I owed him closure. We met at a small cafe, the same one where we used to spend lazy Sunday mornings, back when life was simpler. The familiarity of the place made the conversation even harder. "I'm sorry for everything, Michael," I said, my voice breaking. "You didn't deserve this." He exhaled shakily, his expression a mix of sadness and acceptance. "I won't lie, Emily. It hurt. But maybe we both needed to face some truths about our marriage." He paused, his eyes softening just slightly. "I hope you find what you're looking for." His words were a gift, a small piece of forgiveness that allowed me to finally start moving forward. Over time, Daniel and I found a rhythm. It wasn't always easy. We faced judgment from colleagues and friends. There were moments when the past threatened to swallow us whole. But through it all, we leaned on each other, learning how to navigate love, redemption, and the messy reality of starting over. One evening, as we sat on my balcony, watching the sun dip below the Chicago skyline, Daniel turned to me and said, "I don't know what the future holds, Emily. But I do know I want to face it with you." For the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. I didn't have all the answers. But I knew one thing. I was finally living my truth.